Well, happy 4th of July, day after. Kevin Miller with you. Hope you had a blessed 4th of July. Here we are, kind of hanging out. Are we going to get anybody calling in? Probably not, but that's okay. Certainly, we want to thank you all for listening. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. We got a few stories to talk about, and some of them we had a chance to get to during the week, some of them that we didn't. But most importantly, what the heck is going on in the city of Portland and the state of Oregon, where the illegals have been allowed actually to get driver's licenses. And we first talked a little bit about this on Monday. We really didn't get a chance to go over it. Lars Larson did with us. That was in the 8 o'clock hour. And you can always email us and go to our website, KIDOTalkRadio.com, to catch shows you didn't hear. You know, it's what they call the on-demand world, right? Of course, the KIDO Talk Radio app and other issues. But here's the thing that gets me. In the state of Idaho fought the federal government, and it's like fighting Father Time or Michael Jordan in the day. The Chicago Bulls Michael Jordan, not the Washington Wizards Michael Jordan. It's like when you fought Michael Jordan in the day, Michael Jordan always won. When you fight the feds always win, right? The feds win. So Idaho tried to get a waiver for the driver's license thing. You know, the whole thing, the star card. If you haven't gotten your star card, it is a giant pain in the patootie, right? Do we have the patootie bell with us? There we have it, the patootie bell. And what it means is you have to get either your passport, your birth certificate, along with your current driver's license. Then you have to get either your social security card or your social security card. And then you have to get like proof of residency, like an electric bill, because we want to make sure that you're here legally, that you're allowed to get on airplanes, and it's going to keep all of us safe. All right, that's cool. I get it. Don't really like it, but I understand it. Well, now in Oregon, they've become the 14th state to allow undocumented immigrants, in other words, illegal aliens, illegal immigrants, to come into this country and get a driver's license. So what's going to happen to the state of Oregon? It's going to be what they call not only a sanctuary state, but a destination state, where the illegals are going to know that the coyotes can drop them off. They get to Portland, they get to Oregon, they get to Ontario, and what happens next? Boom, boom. They can get a driver's license. The state Senate in Oregon voted 17-10 recently to allow all undocumented immigrants to obtain a non-commercial driver's license, driver's permit, or ID card without proof of any legal residency. This is per Governor Kate Brown. Now, thankfully, KIDO Talk Radio, we go into Oregon, right? I guess you'd call that Eastern Oregon, our west, but Eastern Oregon, Western Idaho, Eastern Oregon. And there are many people that wish that they had the same type of values that we do in Idaho that they did in Oregon. I mean, you have the rest of the state and you have Portland, right? Sad day indeed. So here we have it, where we have the illegals getting in, and yet states like Oregon and Idaho and others will have to get the star card. So how are you going to do that with the people that are here illegally? It doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, let's take a listen to this story from KGW and get your thoughts on KIDO Talk Radio.
Today, they had close to 130 bills to get through, and reportedly, they have passed 62, so nearly half. Here are some of the ones that have passed so far. The first one on this list is rather controversial. It would allow undocumented...
I love this. Rather controversial. By the way, rather controversial. A difference between what you'd see in Idaho and what you'd see in Oregon. And here's the scary part about this, brothers and sisters. This is what we are fighting against. This is what we don't want to become. I know what you're thinking, Kevin Miller. I may have had a few last night. I may have stayed up too late. I may have done some other things. The fireworks were amazing. You're beating me over the head. No, that's the we don't want to live in Oregon bell, right? But this is coming to Idaho if we do not stand firm for our conservative beliefs.
Documented immigrants to get driver's licenses in Oregon. This goes to the governor next. She's expected to sign it. If and when she does, we'll be the 14th state to allow this. Activists argue a lot of undocumented immigrants live in rural areas. They need to drive, and they live in fear of being deported over a traffic stop. Opponents say since they're here illegally, they shouldn't be allowed to drive at all. Next on this list, basically new limits on the death penalty, because specifically right now it's only applicable when someone is convicted of aggravated murder. This bill would redefine that charge, making it more extreme. Now, the only crimes that qualify as aggravated murder, assuming this gets signed, are things like terrorist acts that kill 2 or more people, killing police officers, or killing children under the age of 14. This bill heads to the governor now. Oregon, by the way, we should note, has a moratorium on the death penalty. No one has been executed here since.
So let's break this down. By the way, that's KGW8 in Portland, right? That's what's going on with the folks in Portland. And thinking about this, I mean, how would you feel if all of a sudden you have people that are driving here illegally, that are doing their own thing, and all of a sudden the state says, you know something? You can get a driver's license. What is the incentive? What is the incentive for anyone to come to America legally, right? Really, what is the incentive for anyone to come to the state and to get a driver's license and to be an American, to be an Idahoan, when you don't have to speak the language, you don't have to learn the language, you don't have to be a citizen to get a driver's license? And let's face it, you get a driver's license, a driver's permit, an ID card, boom, you can do whatever you want. And this is our neighbor, the Orgerons, the Oregons.
Since 1997. This next bill applies to the Capitol workplace culture itself. And this, of course, stems from a couple of years ago where we had interns and fellow senators alike accusing then State Senator Jeff Cruz, there he is, of sexual harassment. As a result, he resigned, and the interns sued, claiming that leaders at the Capitol could have done more to protect them. Assuming the governor signs this bill will continue respectful workplace trainings and establish the legislative equity complaints.
The legislative equity complaints. A lot of big words. Of course, again, this is a summary of the accomplishments of the Oregon legislature. Remember, the senators all vacationed in Idaho to make sure that their freedom to say no would be respected. I don't feel so bad about what we got going on here, do you?
Office to handle complaints. And finally, a bill that basically aims at making it easier to vote in Oregon. This would put paid postage on ballots so you can mail them back without having to buy a stamp. It'll take effect at the beginning of next year, be valid for elections after that. This bill, unlike the others, still needs to be approved by the House.
So there we have it, what's going on in Oregon. But back to this situation. And let's just take a day with you, with me, with God and country, and celebrating our great nation. And what made America so great? The founding fathers, the war for independence, the War of 1812, all these wars, but the ability to understand that to come to America, to become a citizen, was a privilege. Now, the open border crowd within the Democratic Party, they believe that being an American, or not even being an American, coming to America is a right, that everybody has a right to come to America. That Americans, because of what happened in our history, we've stolen the lands from people, we've done everything else that we're not entitled to the United States of America, right? It's crazy when you think of what's going on the loony left. And yet we have this again and again and again from the crazy, wacky, zany liberals. What to make of it? This is what we're up against. But let's face it, driving in Idaho is crazy, dangerous enough, right? It is crazy and dangerous just dealing with the people that are on our roads. I'm sitting there over the weekend, having a good time, leaving a fast food joint of my choice, and I'm at a three-way stop. Actually, three-way stop, but one of the lanes you can keep going through, right? Well, the guy who's supposed to go through decides at the last second to use his signal and his blinker and take a right. Therefore, I'm the second one there. I start going. This lady in this huge SUV almost sideswipes me because she was in a hurry. And what do? You do what everybody is. Hey, you do the nonverbals. And I raise my hands and go, hey! And she gives me a wave. Do we really want people on the road that can't speak the language? And the driver's test is in 26, probably more languages now? Aren't we just figuring out the lack of common sense here? And do we really want people that are here to this? I mean, what's the de-incentivize people from coming to the country now? You get the free room, the free board, the free health care, the free education, free. You don't have to assimilate anymore, and you can get a driver's license thanks to 14 states. Very similar. What is it? 11 states have legalized the illegal weed marijuana, and now you have 14 states saying, it's not a bad deal. We can sit back and just let everybody come in. I know that this would not happen in Idaho, right? Let's hope that we can keep it that way. Kevin Miller in the morning here, the day after the 4th of July, living the dream. A lot going on this week. Of course, people are still going back and forth on the president and his trip to North Korea. Very brief trip. In fact, coming up, we'll hear from Bernie Sanders, who went one-on-one this week with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos. And Bernie's getting the Bernie treatment right now. They're not hip. They're not happening with old Bernie. Bernie is getting, the only person that had a rougher last week than Bernie was Joe Biden. And what did Joe Biden do? Joe Biden said, look, I was not down with the busing. I thought it was a bad idea. You have Kamala Harris. By the way, it's on the Kevin Miller Show Facebook, along with the Kevin Miller Show Twitter, an article from Politico where Kamala Harris, for months, she and her organization planned on getting Biden. And Biden apparently has dropped 10 points in the poll because Biden appears to be out of touch. Biden is not the media elite's choice. Never mind that he was Barack Obama's choice. Biden is not radical, loony, lefty enough. Kamala Harris, Kristen Gillibrand, Mayor Pete, Cory Booker. We could go on and on. They are the chosen people. Coming up, we'll hear what Joe Biden has to say. Anyway, God bless America. That's right. We're saying that right here. God bless America. Thank you, Lord, for giving us the United States of America. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Rolling on the right side. Kevin Miller in the morning. KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be with you. Celebrating America. No, in America, we don't have to give the other side of the story. In America, we don't have to sit back and go, well, what about? No, we don't care, right? Because we love America. We love America. And if you play for the American team, that's good enough for me. Let's get to it. Earlier this week, Bernie Sanders getting smacked by George Stephanopoulos. Let's take a listen.
Back in the 1970s, I want to bring the debate forward. You've mentioned you're concerned about the idea of resegregation of our schools. Does that mean that busing should be on the table today?
Well, I think resegregation is a very, very serious problem. And the federal government has failed in fighting for fair housing legislation. We need basically in this country well-funded public schools. We need to honor our teachers.
Okay, it looks like Bernie's not going to answer the question. We'll get back to that. And it's funny because when there's a conservative, George Stephanopoulos rips him. When it's a lib, he lets the crazy, wacky, zany liberal go run wild, right? How many of us remember busing? Probably not in Idaho. In California, in the Midwest, busing happened. Busing was tough, where you'd have white kids going into black neighborhoods, black kids going into white neighborhoods, sometimes 20, 30, sometimes over an hour on a school bus. in the name of integration. What about when you have communities that want to self-segregate? They're not racist, but they self-segregate. We could say that most of our churches are self-segregating. You have your Korean churches, you have your Hispanic churches, you have your regular white churches, you have your black churches, and you have people that come in, but pretty much people self-segregate when it comes to faith. Sometimes people would argue that people self-segregate when it comes to housing. And, you're taking a look at Bernie Sanders, and the federal government's going to do everything. And that sounds great and fun and fantastic until the federal government, in its own infinite wisdom, I mean, have we ever thought of a bureaucracy that wins? No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, has anybody ever felt good when you're dealing with the government? Maybe getting a mortgage, maybe getting financing approved. Not that the private sector is all that better, because the private sector, at least they're being honest and saying they're in it for themselves. Back to Bernie. Bernie. KIDO Talk Radio. Bernie?
Respect teachers, make sure that they're earning a living wage. We need to take care of those schools today which have a lot of kids who are, in some cases, actually hungry, coming from troubled families. We need to build public education in this country. We need to make sure that kids go to community schools.
You listen to Bernie Sanders, and it sounds like that American kids didn't suffer. What did we do before the school lunch program? What did we do before the school breakfast program? What do we do now? It happens in the Treasure Valley. It happens just about everywhere, right? But the government kind of said, look, it's up to your faith-based folks. It's up to the individuals to figure out how to feed themselves. Now you've got Bernie Sanders wanting to create a giant nanny state, socialism, and you have a lot of millennials saying, hey, that's a good idea. Free college tuition, free home mortgage, free. Except it isn't. We've got a huge debt. We've got a huge deficit that eventually we're going to have to pay for. Blame the baby boomers. Blame the baby boomers. You could blame the Gen Xers, but there aren't enough of them to blame. Blame the millennials. Blame. Where's the real solution? I mean, Bernie Sanders is talking about, we need to pay teachers. We need affordable housing. Duh. What's your plan, buddy? And what does that have to do with busing, sir?
Which are integrated. And that means we have to focus on fair housing, legislation, and enforcement.
But does that also mean busing? Because your website actually says that you're coming out for repealing of the ban on funding for busing.
No, busing is certainly an option that is necessary in certain cases, but it is not the optimal. Does anybody think it's a good idea to put a kid on a bus, travel an hour to another school, into another neighborhood that he or she doesn't know?
Well, apparently that was traumatic for Kamala Harris. Now, look, that was a brilliant political move, and we'll get back to Bernie. By the way, if you're just tuning in, Kevin Miller, the day after the 4th of July, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Look, that was a brilliant political move. And I don't really know how it works, where on one hand you get sympathy for portraying yourself as a victim. On the other hand, then because you're a little girl and you were bused and it was horrible, you've grown into this strong, vibrant, dynamic woman, and boom, you're going to stick it to out-of-touch Joe Biden. All right. How many of you watch Game of Thrones? Well, I've heard about it there, Kevin Miller. I've heard about it there, Kevin. At the end of Game of Thrones, many people came up to this one character and said, man, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. I'm sorry I did this. And the kid said, look, it was these experiences that made you who you are, right? Kamala Harris's childhood made her who she is. She should be very proud of herself, right? But the ethnic-centric politics of the Democratic primary, which they openly talk about, is going to alienate a lot of folks. Going after Joe Biden for something that happened in the 70s, many people remember the 70s. And I don't know how you can be strong and a victim at the same time, including getting ready to attack Biden, brilliantly executing it, having your acolytes in the media back you up, and then complete with fundraising and selling T-shirts. And lo and behold, Kamala Harris is number 3 in the polls. I don't think that's real. Just like Mayor Pete raised $25 million. Hey, I'm Mayor Pete, everybody. I'm 37 and I know everything because I'm a mayor of South Bend, Indiana. Except when the people yell at him. Yeah, Mayor Pete was great until he had to take a punch. And Kamala Harris, as we know, has an interesting and rather public background. Okay, back to Bernie here with Kevin Miller.
It's not the optimal. What is the optimal is to have great community schools which are integrated. That's what I think most people want to see. That's what I want to see.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thanks for your time this morning.
There you have it from this week. Senator Bernie, thank you for your time this week. Coming up, remembering a hero that gave it all until the very end, right? And we celebrate and we honor the people that made America great on the 4th of July. How many times have we read that piece by Jeff Jacoby of the Boston Globe, and maybe written by others, that went through the founding fathers, the people that wrote their names on the Declaration of Independence, and it cost them their life, their liberty, their home, their fortune, everything for our beautiful dream. We idolize these people in books, but how many of us, if we faced the same challenges, the same twisted challenges, would respond the very same way? Would we give our life, our family, for freedom? That's the message of the 4th of July, complete with the fireworks and the sails. But we love America. That's right. We love America. We love Idaho. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you for waking up on the right side. Kevin Miller in the morning. KIDO Talk Radio. Happy July 5th, everybody. Happy July 5th. Blessed to be with you. Blessed to be in Idaho. Blessed to be, as Sean Hannity would say, as part of the conservative resistance. You know, a couple weeks ago, Eric Trump was at a Chicago eatery. Eric Trump was minding his own business, doing his own thing, and all of a sudden, you had somebody spit on him. Remember what happened to Sarah Huckabee Sanders? They were at a restaurant, and then all of a sudden they were thrown out because they worked for the president. They worked out because they worked for the president. A great honor. So the owner of that Virginia restaurant, Stephanie Wilkinson, decided to write a resistance piece for the article Washington Post. And this time, she's sticking up for the server in Chicago, in the eatery, who allegedly spit on the president's son, Eric Trump. Now, these folks, thankfully, don't live in Idaho. These folks are not part of Idaho. But can you imagine, and most of us have seen pictures of the White House, and the older I get, maybe you're the same, I just have a yearning to go to Mount Rushmore. I have a yearning to go see our beautiful tribute to the presidents. And those that have gone to the White House, those who have seen it, there's not a greater honor that one can have outside of the military and being a first responder than working for the president, than working at the pleasure, at the direction of the commander-in-chief. Simply a great honor in a state, in a nation of over 330 million people. And that's probably legally. Illegally, you probably throw in a little 20 million more. That was an attempt at humor. But to openly say, according to this restaurant owner, there are new rules and restaurants are now part of the soundstage for our ongoing national spectacle in the Trump era. It's not okay to ask employees, partners, or management to clock out of their consciousness when they clock into work. She weirdly compares it to sexual abuse by grabby chefs or customers. This from our friends at Newsbusters, led by Tim Graham. So when you go to a restaurant, now all of a sudden, and by the way, if you can go to a restaurant where the food's good and the service is decent, or both, that's a good thing. You know, whether you want to blame the millennial culture, the Gen X culture, the lack of sense of urgency with people, service today, not what it could be, right? You know, how many times do we reward good service when the guy keeps going, hey, can I help you? Can I help you? As opposed to somebody that doesn't come back and fill up your drink. You're paying to be served. Well, you ever watch that show, Bar Rescue? Bar Rescue is about a show by this guy named John Tapper. And he's a big, obnoxious guy. He's been in bars forever. So he goes in, he blows up the bar, not literally, but he He finds out what's wrong, fixes the bar, and it's been on for years. I'm surprised it still is. It's very predictable. He yells at people and tapper this and tapper that. But I was listening to an interview with him once, and he said, you know, the biggest thing about going to a restaurant, what's the biggest attraction? Is it the food? No, it's the service. It's entertainment. Back when I was a human, I used to go to restaurants, and that was my entertainment, going to restaurants and being entertained. Kind of like in The Sopranos. Hey, baby, right? Well, so there's an expectation to be entertained. So here we have a restaurant owner saying that the servers have a right to make you feel uncomfortable, have a right to trash you, to call you names, to spit on you. It's fascinating that Wilkinson can proclaim that in America, if you're, quote, an unsavory individual or whatever persuasion or affiliation, we have no legal or moral obligation to do business with you, but they can force bakers to make gay wedding cakes. That's a great point, Tim Graham of Newsbusters. You know, you think about this, and this is why there is no rationale for the left. There is simply no rationale for the left, right? Donald Trump could make North Korea the shiniest republic on God's green earth, and these folks would still have an issue with him. Let's take a listen and a look at the reaction. And by the way, the Today Show is supposedly mainstream, right? The Today Show is supposedly big time, but you have Craig Melvin, a liberal. You have other people that are liberals. And, you know, the thing is, the president reached out to the guy in North Korea. Whether we like North Korea or not, we've got Kristen Welker as well going after this guy. Let's take a listen to their reaction to the president trying to keep the peace.
And images and videos released by North Korea sort of underscores the risk here, right? How big of a risk was this move for President Trump? And could it actually be dangerous, Jeremy?
There we have it. Kristen Welker, by the way, I don't know when these people rest. Kristen Welker went on the G20 trip, was in North Korea, I believe. So she comes back with her big opportunity to host the Today Show. So they're accusing the president of propaganda. They're accusing the president of this when he engaged with the dictator. Isn't that a good thing?
Well, Kristen, this is symbolism over substance. I mean, North Korea has nuclear fuel for about...
Where was the substance with President Obama? Right?
50 nuclear bombs worth. They have an intercontinental ballistic missile. They test fired it actually 2 years ago, the week of July 4th. So with time, as time goes by, they are increasing their program. And if they're only delivering us photo ops as opposed to actual accounting of their nuclear facilities and dismantlement, I think it's actually potentially dangerous for the United States.
There we have it, straight from NBC. Crazy. Hey, we'll get back to the national political scene in a minute. But first, how many of you go to the supermarket, right? By the way, you're listening to Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. You know, it's usually one of the spouses go, and it's always kind of quaint when you see the husband and the wife, or I guess these days, the husband and the husband, the wife and the wife, or whomever, right? So in my household, in our household, there's one person that gets to go to the supermarket, and that would be me. So this one hits close to home. You ever see people eating food in the supermarket? Like they're so hungry, they open up like the chips. Now, I'll confess at Walmart when they have the Nathan's hot dogs, just even saying that makes me hungry, I might have a free sample, right? Well, it turns out you still have to pay for your food if you take it off the shelf and eat it while browsing at any store. But this happened in Texas, and this Texas woman learned the hard way. She was at Walmart. I know what you're going to say. Oh, it had to be a Walmart shopper. Look, Walmart, good people. So this woman was at Walmart, was seen eating half a cake. How do you eat half a cake, right? It's like half a potato chip. It's like you can only have one potato chip, right? You can't. So she's eating half a cake in the aisle. When she arrived at the checkout, she claimed that she'd only have to pay for the remainder since she was only buying half a cake. Now, I like this. So here's the deal. I found this cake. It's not a whole cake. It's a half a cake, and I should only have to pay for a half of it. Has she ever heard of video surveillance? Most likely not. Arriving because the store didn't have the same sense of humor that we do at KIDO Talk Radio. They didn't see it the same way, making her pony up the full amount, then saying, "You're not allowed to come back to this location ever, 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 ever." Now, this is not the first time that this area in Wichita Falls, Texas, has had the crazies. They seem to attract their fair share of crazies. Did you know a few months ago, a woman was busted in a different location, but at a Walmart, for riding around the parking lot on an electric scooter while drinking wine out of a Pringles can? Let me say that again. You know you're not in Idaho when the person in front of you claims they should only have to pay for half a cake since they ate the first half and the people didn't buy it. The second issue here is, I don't know if this was a Saturday night, if people were looking for a good time. Hey, what are you doing this Saturday night? I'm going to go to Walmart. I'm going to get an electronic scooter. I'm going to have some wine. I'm going to have a great time. And oh, yes. Well, how are you going to drink that wine? I'm going to drink it out of a Pringles can. I'm going to drink it out of a Pringles can. Now, I don't know. I think there would be better things to do than drinking some wine. And couldn't they get you for drinking and driving, right? Couldn't they do that? Who knows? In other news that we're monitoring here at KIDO Talk Radio, a very interesting issue coming out of the Facebook. How many people love the Facebook these days? Hey, look at this. Hey, look at that. I remember years ago, we had a company Christmas party, and the guy next to me was taking pictures, and it was before Instagram. Maybe Twitter was around, but he would go, "Hey, look at my meal." And you still have people doing that. Now they're called foodies. So Facebook launches a civil rights task force to combat misinformation. In other words, anybody's a conservative, you're misidentifying things. If you're a lib, woohoo! The lib bell, right? Facebook has launched a civil rights task force whose job it is to prevent the spread of misinformation on their platform, in particular about the upcoming census and 2020 elections. In other words, conservative, fake news, liberal, real news. The platform will be banning ads that encourage users not to vote and to tighten policies on hate speech and other offensive content. It always amazes me that the conservatives get banned and booted and shadow ghosted or whatever they call it. And they have like Al-Qaeda stuff on there. They have ISIS stuff on there. They have all these disturbing things on the Facebook. How they get away with that is beyond me. How did we find out about this? Did they send out a press release to us here, Kevin Miller in the Morning, KIDO Talk Radio? No, we found out about it like everybody else. In a blog post, Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg, who I believe used to work at Yahoo, says the social media giant plans to treat next year's census like an election, with people, policies, and technology in place to protect against census interference. I don't know how you can interfere with the census. Recently, the Supreme Court said you can't ask somebody if they're a citizen. What's the point of the census if you can't ask someone if they're a citizen? The census is not there to count people. The census is there to count citizens, right? That's what it's about. So I don't know how the Facebook is going to determine what is and isn't fake news. Unfortunately, it's going to be tougher for people that love the president, love conservatism, love America, right? You ever notice when conservatives speak, it's all about love of country, and the libs tell us what we did wrong? Kind of like marriage, maybe. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Rolling on the right side, Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580. And don't forget, KIDO Talk Radio is your home for the KIDO Talk Radio award-winning newsletter, where you get all the stories of the week, expertly compiled for you by our newsletter editor, Daniel the Tiger. That's his name, Daniel the Tiger. So the Tiger puts together all the news. We send it out to you. We don't spam you. The KIDO Talk Radio app we go out of our way not to indulge you in, or not deluge you. Yes, thank you, Kevin. Deluge you with, endless 8, 9, 10 alerts a day. It can get overwhelming. So when we do send something to you, it's very important. So again, check that out. Google Play, the App Store, the Apple podcast, not podcasting, but Apple Store. Check it out. By the way, coming up very soon, speaking of podcasting, at least for a month or so, we're going to be involved in a very special test run put together by our parent company where this program will be exclusively available on Apple Podcast and Google Play, Stitcher, and everything else. So if you're one of these folks that you get tired of how we do things now with the YouTube and everything else, and yeah, the YouTube files are great. They're free. They're fun. They're exciting. There's no commercials. Ray Amaya does an outstanding job with them. But if you'd like a more podcasting-centered, friendly format, we will have that announcement for you coming up probably by mid-July, in and around the time of the Snake River Stampede, one of the few shows in America outside of the national shows that will be available. We're going to see how it goes, see how you like it. Obviously, this show is one of the most streamed in our company. So we want to see, we're going to be the test run for that, and whether or not we can, continue to make that happen and put it on Apple Podcast and Google Play so you can just download it right away. I will let you know when they are there, and it will be simply, I think, KIDO Talk Radio's Kevin Miller, something of that nature. Earlier, I was talking about heroes, right? And do we really celebrate heroes on the 4th of July? We should. But what do we do during the 4th of July? Many people are in McCall. Hey, everybody, I'm in McCall. McCall's a great place. Donley, home of Papa Jerry, is a great place. The Oregon coast is a great place. In the Treasure Valley, it's a great place, right? But traveling, does that really honor our great American heroes? Maybe going to the cemetery, the Veterans Cemetery, maybe traveling to Mount Rushmore, traveling to the Grand Canyon, traveling to Washington, D.C. Does that honor our people? Do we effectively honor heroes on the 4th of July as we're celebrating with the fireworks and the hot dogs and the cookout and the sense of camaraderie in a divisive world that we live in, perpetrated by the mainstream liberal media? Do we really celebrate America by having the fireworks? It's supposed to be rockets, red glare, the Star-Spangled Banner, that sort of thing. Well, today, I'd like to honor a hero. And what is a hero? A hero is someone who gives it their all. We read books about heroes, and whether they were in Vietnam or Korea or Kandahar or Balakashir or Saigon or wherever, heroes, or fighting the Nazis and the Japanese. You wonder, most of us do, whether or not we would have what it takes to be a hero. To know that the actions that we're doing would cause us to die, either initially or later on in life. The most popular show on television is a paid show. Believe it or not, it's from HBO. No, I'm not talking about Game of Thrones. It's about Chernobyl. 5-part miniseries. It's a docudrama, but Chernobyl in 1986, and maybe Fukushima was worse, but for the world, Fukushima really couldn't have been worse because the Japanese outed themselves and go, look, we got a problem. The Soviet Union, in the crucial steps before and after the explosion of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, did everything it could to hide everything and falsely assumed they had everything under control. It was a national embarrassment. And you had brave people, some knowing, some not knowing that they were going to die because of the radiation, the cancer, dying horrible deaths. And the world honors that now. Well, recently you had a man by the name of Luis Alvarez testifying before Congress before he was going to die. Luis Alvarez was 53 years old, was a detective with the New York Police Department bomb squad. After September 11th, he spent 3 months at Ground Zero. Now, having been to Ground Zero just a few weeks after September 11th, I can tell you it burned your lungs. It was, I don't know if it was sulfur, it burns your lungs. And I was in the fenced off area. But day after day, Mr. Alvarez went there to try and save lives, to try and make a difference. Years later, it cost him his life. Let's take a listen.
Luis Alvarez spent his dying days pleading before Congress so 9/11 first responders could have health benefits, and in the end, he gave his life to the rescue effort. Luis Alvarez spent 3 months breathing in toxins at Ground Zero, searching for survivors and remains after the September 11th terror attacks. His cancer was linked to the air he breathed in. Alvarez was an NYPD detective, a Marine, and a father of 3 boys. He called Shepard Smith just before his death to share a message with the public that he didn't hesitate when the call came in 18 years ago, and he knew he'd be leaving his children fatherless when the final curtain came. But he needed to fight one more time before he could go in peace.
There you have it. You know, if you have to question whether or not the September 11th survivors deserve the money, with all due respect, can't see you loving America. To even question it is not a patriotic thing to do. When you hear what Mr. Alvarez has to say here, you'll understand on KIDO Talk Radio.
You all said you would never forget. Well, I'm here to make sure that you don't.
53 years old, leaving his family behind. That's a hero. That's a hero on this July 5th. We're just getting started here, but honoring America. We've got some great newsmakers coming up. And honoring the sacrifice of people. The 18-year-old that never got to get married or go to the prom because he loves America. And that's what we do. We love our country. We love our state so much. Just a blessing to be with you here today. Coming up next, Fox News on the Radio, then more of your comments about the issues that matter to you. And if you just want to chill, that's what we're here for. You're listening to Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.